Hey, welcome back to Geocaching World. We're talking about RVing along the open road and geocaching at the same time, right?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what, nothing better to stretch your legs and get that fresh air while you're going on your trip.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's really great to be able to travel. You've got there are some really good things about being able to geocache when you RV. There are some things that you kind of have to think about. It's not necessarily the easiest for certain kinds of caches. But what are some of the pros and cons that we can talk about when you're traveling in a vehicle and trying to geocache at the same time?
Well, I think the first thing that you need to consider is the actual type of vehicle that you're in. In other words, if you're in a minivan, being able to drive on any type of road is pretty good. If you're in an RV, you really need to consider where that geocache is and how you need to get to it, because if you get yourself stuck in an area that you can't back up, that could cause some problems.
That's right. Now, so just the sheer size of the vehicle is at least one issue. But with many RVers travel, some of them tow small cars, of course. But for those that don't, they may have bicycles or even a motorized cycle. Is that a great way to geocache?
Oh, I'll tell you what, that would really be a nice feature to have, because think about it, you could stop off at a local area. It could be not necessarily even a rest area. It could be one of the off-ramps. Bring down your bicycles and pedal to the nearest couple of geocaches. Great exercise and also a great way to see scenery.
That's right, and I think that's also really good in, say, urban kinds of environments. Sometimes you can get more places faster on a bicycle than you can in a full-size vehicle.
Absolutely, and it's convenient. You're able to control the situation of exactly where you're going, and I don't think you can get into too much trouble that way on a bike.
Right. Now, what about not using an automotive GPS for geocaching? How is that? Is that a good option or not?
Well, actually, with the routing, it's sort of built in, and it depends on how you want to set this up. If you're taking that GPX file that we talked about in the previous section, that pocket query, and you're putting it in a handheld GPS unit, then that's what you're going to have to go by as far as where the actual geocache is. You may or may not have that navigation direction road by road kind of thing. On a lot of the automobile type GPS units, that's built in. You can actually load that GPS in or the GPX file into the GPS unit, and it'll literally take you as close to that geocache as you can get right there on the GPS screen.
Okay, and so, all right, so you need to make those kind of considerations. I mean, if you're kind of a casual geocacher, although I know that's really hard for you to imagine, Andy.
I don't know what you mean, sir.
Yes, I'm sorry, I've not heard of such a thing. Yeah,
I'm abashed.
If you're if you are a casual GPSer, then maybe the automotive type is fine, or if you've got a lot of time on your hands when the GPS doesn't take you where you're supposed to be, then the automotive type is fine, right? But
I think that's actually, you hit it on the head, because sometimes the automobile GPS units will take you the wrong way, and I think that's kind of a misconception that a lot of people have about those particular type of GPS units. An automobile GPS unit will get you there. It may not necessarily get you there the way you want to get there.
That's right.
So you kind of have to take consideration of, it's going to not necessarily find the fastest route or the best route, or, hey, why couldn't we have just gone that way? It will get you where you need to go, but it's only as good as the maps that are in it.
Well, and it really is kind of traffic oriented in some respects too. It may not necessarily be the most direct route, but from a driving standpoint, assuming that you're not going to stop, maybe they're looking for a faster route from a driving standpoint, but not necessarily the shortest route as the crow flies.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things you just have to be patient with it, because a lot of times those type of units are really good for getting you to the geocache that you may have taken a longer time trying to figure out on your own.
Now a handheld GPS unit, one that is accurate and the kind that you really want to have when you're out in the field, is that are there special problems with using that while you're driving, or do you have what's the this seems like there has to be a technique here.
Yeah, and a lot of it deals with different things. If you've got a partner, a co-driver with you, obviously that's the best thing you want to do. You don't want to be driving looking at your GPS unit like this.
Right.
So that there's a safety factor that's involved with that. Depending on how high or low end the GPS unit is going to dictate whether it has the ability to do street by street directions. A lot of them that you use for the handheld type, unless you go high end, do not have that ability. In other words, it'll draw a straight line right to where the geocache is. It doesn't care where the roads are. So you kind of have to, figure out the best way to get to there. The higher end ones will have the navigation built in.
Right. Okay. Great. All right. Well, one of the things that you were in your video that you had that you created earlier, there was one geocache that you found, which I was kind of interested in. Sounds like a park and grab type, which is a guardrail cache, guardrail hide. Is that usually typically kind of a park and grab kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of times you'll find guardrail hides, especially at the rest areas, because they need to direct the traffic to go, depending on the type that you are, as far as being an RVer or if you're in a minivan or what have you. There's always a ton of guardrails, and guardrail caches are very popular.
Okay, well, here's a guardrail hide that also carries with it a little safety lesson. So let's look at this video right now.
Okay, we're at another stop on our way to the ocean. This is a guardrail hide, and you notice how I always tell you to be careful where you stick your hands when you're doing this? Let me show you this. That is a very large, let me see if I could zoom in here. That is a very large black widow spider. Guarding her nest.
Well, I guess some people might consider that to be swag, right?
Yeah, that's the delicate kind. I would be very, very careful, and I think that right up there with poke it with a stick, you have to be careful of the area that you're geocaching in. A lot of times when you're RVing, you're going over many different states and many different terrains, and you really need to know where you're sticking your hand in and why and what can get you. That's a prime example. That was a really good-sized black widow spider down by Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'll tell you what, I was surprised when I saw it, and I am so glad I didn't stick my hand in there first. Right.
Now, was the cache in there?
The cache was actually on the other side. Now, one of the things that you always have with geocaching, X is never always the spot. It can be anywhere from X number of feet away from what you think ground zero is. In that particular case, it was the next post down.
Right. So this is the other rule that I learned from you, which is when you get to ground zero, or what your GPS is telling you is ground zero, put the GPS in your pocket and start using your eyes.
Very true, and that is absolutely going to save you a whole lot of time when you do that.
Okay, we got a quick question here. Speaking of swag, I think this person has a question from the chat room. What makes good and what makes bad swag? This is a little off our topic, but I think it's a good question here because if you're someone who's hiding geocaches, you really have to think about, okay, what is it you want to have in there as a giveaway or as a gift for the finder, and what makes bad gifts, I guess.
I think that's an excellent question, and I think we're going to be doing a show in the not too distant future about everything you want to know about swag. But in short, a lot of times swag doesn't necessarily have to mean expensive. There are different types of dollar-type stores where you can get really cool, useful things for $1. Anything from little toolkits, flashlights. one of my favorite things that I get out of one of those stores is first aid kits. I go in, I put those into geocaches because we need it. But anything that is not used, and sometimes geocachers will bring their kids and they'll have their Happy Meal toys and they'll be busted up. Not so good for something to trade, and especially when one of the things about swag is you're trading for equal or better value to keep the geocaches full with good swag. Putting in something busted to take something good isn't exactly what I would consider a good trade when it comes to swag.
Right, and it's kind of nice to have something that is useful or interesting, maybe something that is sort of has a significance to the area, and that kind of thing kind of makes the hobby a lot more fun.
Absolutely, and sometimes you get those really cool ones where you just go, wow, and we will discuss that in a future episode.
Okay, great. All right, well, stay with us here on Geocaching World. We'll be right back, and we'll have a little bit more about trips and planning routes for geocaching, and a little bit more about the Geek of the Week program here that we're starting. So stay with us, and we'll be back in just a minute. Got a question or a comment about geocaching? Send it to geocache@rvnn.tv or leave us a voicemail at 877-578-RVNN, extension 714. Tell us about a cache you especially enjoyed finding, and we may feature it in an upcoming episode. Follow RV Newsnet on Facebook and Twitter, and you can receive text messages to alert you when we're streaming live by texting RVNN to 72727. That way, you can join us live in the chat room, ask questions, and become part of the RV Newsnet family. Remember, any photos or other material submitted to us become the property of RV Newsnet and cannot be returned. For more TV like this from the world of RVs, head to RVNN.com.